All right, in this video, we're going to look at the historical analysis of the fourth degree of Masonry called the Secret Master's Degree. We're going to look at how this degree was actually invented by Popery, and it is Jesuitical in origin. Now, in order to do this, we have to look at a couple of highlighted sections that I have highlighted here in Jonathan Blankard's book on the Scottish Rite, Profusely Exposed. We're going to begin by looking at this section right here, the twin evils, Popery and Lodgery, the twin evils. You want to know what's evil in the world today? It is Popery and Lodgery. There's going to be some good explanation here in these highlighted sections on what all this consists of. Let's begin by looking at the answer to the question. The question is not how it can be that this degree is Popery and Jesuitical, but is it true that the higher degrees of Masonry are Popish in origin? This must be settled by proof. So the proofs are going to come right here. Pay close attention. This is a historical analysis. This is very important to understand so that you understand that, most Masons get in the first, second, third degree, and then they go into the higher degrees, which begins right here with the fourth degree. And you have to understand that these people have been mind controlled into Popery. They might claim to be Christians. They might claim to be evangelical Protestant Christians. But we're going to see that they have been subverted by being initiated into these wicked, wicked degrees. And it begins right here in the fourth degree. Now, the historical analysis begins by saying, the world knows that James II, a declared papist, fled to France in 1688, where he died 13 years afterward. Lenning says, after his flight to France and during his residence at the Jesuit College of Clermont, his adherents, among whom were the Jesuits, fabricated certain degrees with the design of carrying out their political views. Look at that section right there. They carried out these designs, these Jesuitical designs, with the goal of carrying out their political views. There's no doubt about it that Masonry, even in our day, is political. Just look at what they call today the swamp in the Congress, right? They're all Masons. Whether they're women, whether they're men, they're all Masons. They're carrying out their quote-unquote political views. They talk about it openly in their ideologies of all religions are equal. That is why every religion in the United States is practiced. But it goes on and it says, this is taken from Mackey's Encyclopedia article, Stuart Masonry. And there is no higher Masonic authority, right? No higher Masonic authority than Mackey's Encyclopedia. Another standard Masonic author, McCoy, says the degrees of this rite are, for the most part, fabricated from the system invented by Ramsay. Now, if you don't know who Ramsay is, look at our videos. I'll post it below, where we read a description about Ramsay and who he was, right? This Ramsay, here's a little small description of him also. A brilliant young Scotsman, apostatized to Popery. He was 20 years old when James II fled to France. So this guy was pretty young, right? When James II went to France. Ramses followed him and became tutor to his sons. He became an instrument of the Jesuits. See this Ribald history, page 161. In adding upper degrees to simple York Masonry, and so to draw English Masons into a conspiracy to overthrow the throne of William and Mary, and bring in despotism and the Stuarts. Having amassed a large fortune by his Scottish thrift, royal patronage, and the sale of Masonic rights and dignities, he offered to enrich his relatives in Scotland, doubtless hoping to draw them into his Stuart Masonry, along with the Jesuits. But they scorned him and rejected his proffered wealth. He then tried to introduce his Masonry into England, but was repulsed, went back to France, and died at Poitiers in 1743. See his life in Mackey's Cyclopedia. Thus it is proven that the first higher degrees of Masonry were invented by French Jesuits and their instruments. And thus is explained how it can be that popery can at once prohibit and permit the lodge, right? You know, the Roman Catholics will tell you, no, Masonry actually is prohibited. As with the Jesuits, the end sanctifies the means, right? So for the Jesuits, it doesn't matter. Right now, the current Pope, Pope Francis, is a Jesuit, right? So he's a Mason and he's a Roman Catholic. Here it begins to explain what's going on here. Masonry is right when seeking to enthrone popery. So whenever it's promoting popery, right, in Masonry, then the Jesuit Pope, for example, or any Pope will say, yes, it's good. And it's wrong when its oaths of secrecy interfere with the confessional. So you have the mind control of the confessional booth, which everything is supposed to be divulged in the confessional booth, right? They're supposed to go confess their sins in this mind control of popery. And that is why, historically, the Roman Catholics have said Masonry is not allowed, because they swore these oaths in the lodge that say, you know, you're not supposed to divulge the secrets of Masonry. But in the confessional booth, you're supposed to divulge all your secrets, right? So the papists want the confessional booth, which is the original NSA, right, spy mechanism. They want all their laundry to come out in the confessional booth. And that's where Masonry conflicts with popery. And the confessional booth is higher than popery. And that's why you'll see sometimes the Pope act traditional and sometimes he acts completely Masonic and humanistic, right? And its dues diminish Peter's penance, they would say. But the point is proved, if history can prove anything, that the higher degrees of Masonry, so-called, are of Popish origin, invented by Jesuits to destroy Protestantism and popular liberty in Europe. So the Jesuits wanted to destroy the liberty movement growing in Europe and, of course, here in the United States. They want everyone back under the slavery of popery. That's why they bring in all these Roman Catholics south of the border, and they invade our country with these heretics and their false religion of papist mind control. And thus it is fulfilled the symbolic prophecy of Revelation 13 chapter, the first beast being Rome pagan and the second Rome papal. And the secret lodge system is a shadowy image, right, the image of the beast, of the iron despotism of Rome, made by them that dwell on the earth, quote unquote. Promiscuously, not by churchmen or any one nationality, but by everyone at large, civilized, barbarous, savage, all these different kinds of mind control people they allow into the lodge, false religions, as we see at the present day. American Masons are not ashamed to boast that barbarians or beasts, right, beastly men, are their brethren, and that their lodge religion is the natural religion of mankind, thus annihilating the Christian religion and ignoring Christian civilization. The names given by the French to the higher orders are Popish. Chapter, they would say, quote unquote, right? Their chapters are, that's a Popish title. Templar, Knights, these are Roman Catholic Popish names given. Council are all Popish names first invented by priests, the pagan priests of the Roman Catholic Church, while the image outdoes the beasts themselves. pagan and papal Rome, in the grandiloquence of its titles and the garnishedness of its regalia. But the identity of these religions of Antichrist is not merely outward, but inward and moral, the chief elements being secrecy and despotism. September 27th, 1540, Pope Paul III established the Society of Jesuits, right? The Society of Jesus, as they call themselves, called the Jesuits. God has said in Isaiah 48:16, I have not spoken in secret from the beginning. And Christ repeated, in secret I have said nothing. John 18:20. The secrecy of the Jesuits, their Latin is secreta monita, was impenetrable, and Lafarie, when told he would die if he attempted to travel as he was ordered to do, answered, it is not necessary that I should live, but it is necessary I should obey, right? Because they're under mind control oaths, swearing death oaths, so it was necessary for this guy to keep his oath, because if not, he would die anyways, right? He went and died. These two pillars in the temple of Antichrist, visa secrecy and subjection, appear in every stronghold of the devil on earth, from the Vatican to the Puro in the African bush. Quote, we require, says Powderly, quote, secrecy and obedience, unquote. Whereas these are, however flitting and wavering, there is an image of the beast. Right? Wherever this stuff is flaunted and touted, there is the image of the beast. So it goes on here in this section giving another historical analysis of Ramsey. You could read this a little bit here if you pause the video. It goes on and says, 4 years after its origin in 1761, this council of emperors, quote unquote, empowered by a Jew named Stephen Morin, who was coming to America to act as Inspector General of all the higher lodges of Masonry in the New World, his commission ran, quote, we do recognize our dearest brother, Stephen Morin, as our Grand Master Inspector to establish perfect and sublime mind control Masonry, I added the mind control, in every part of the world. That's in Folger's History of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite, page 31, documents. This Jew came via San Domingo, right? I documented that, the island there, in one of my videos where they have an altar to this Jew, Morin, to Charleston, South Carolina, and finding that it paid, established a lodge of inspector, quote-unquote, generals. Of the first 16 inspectors whom he appointed, 13 were Jews, as was Morin himself. The 3 who were not Jews were Colonel John Mitchell, Colonel Provost, and Dr. Frederick Dalco. It's in Folger's History, also page 38. And Folger's adds the same page, if his history speaks correctly, Morin and his coadjunctors found manufacturing Masonic degrees and the sale of Masonic dignities a very profitable and lucrative undertaking. Right? It was all about making money, right? You got to pay your due fees. A lot of these Masons that don't even go to the meetings, they have to pay their due fees. And it's another way of promoting false religion and paying for it. So it was a lucrative undertaking. They pursued it diligently, making all the money they could from the traffic. This is from the latest History of the Ancient Accepted Scottish Rite by Robert B. Folger, past Master 33rd degree. It goes on and says, as no honest Jew goes above the Master Mason degree on account of his religion. That's an interesting point. You know, maybe a lot of these Jews don't go beyond it because, you know, the later degrees talk about the Lord Jesus Christ. And so it says here that no honest, quote, Jew goes above the Master Mason degree on account of his religion. But I imagine these Jews right now today, they don't care, right? It doesn't matter, right? It's a free fall of mind control and false religion of unity, because what they want to do is get everybody to come together under the mind control of the perennial philosophy of all these false religions in order to control them, ultimately. These 13 Jews were mere lodge gamblers. And with Mitchell, Provost, and Dalco, they took Morin's 25 degrees, which constituted the right of perfection, quote unquote, right? All Morin was empowered to confer, added 8 more, revised and rearranged the rest, and produced the subject of this volume, that is the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite. This French Masonry, falsely called Scottish, is a religious pestilence, spread and spreading over the most enlightened nations on the globe. Goes on and says it takes its name from stonemasons who initiated their apprentices, journeymen, and master masons. 4 of these clubs at the London Tavern in 1717, right? There were 4 clubs that formed the 1717 Lodge in England. They dropped stonemasonry, quote, accepted all who would pay, right? So it became the accepted ones who would pay to become part of the groups and the clubs that they were consolidating into one lodge in 1717, the big one in England. So they accepted all who would pay. They started a religion to fit men for heaven without Christ. And thenceforth it took its stand with false religions of the world, based on lying legends, secrecy, mystery, and show. Here the Jesuits took it up, as seen above, to destroy the free agency of men in religion by sworn obedience to unknown superiors, right? A lot of these mind control slaves in the Masonic Lodge, they don't even know who their superiors are. They know their Master Mason. The Master Mason knows who's above him, and it goes in this pyramid scheme all the way to the top. But in reality, they're all compartmentalized, right? A lot of these guys are ignorant. They just know there's a great conspiracy. They see it as we see it. And they're in sworn obedience to unknown superiors. The Jesuits had existed since 1540 by the same principles of secrecy and abject submission, and so blended readily with the London Lodge. This is where the Jesuits come into the London Lodge. But England was Protestant, right? And had read the Bible. The London York Rite, 3 degrees, Lodge of English Masons, could not be used to restore the Papist Charles II and James II, right? These were the off-breed of the Roman Catholics that got mind-controlled from the British Crown, and his sons to destroy stubborn English liberty. The Jesuits took up these exiles, added upper degrees to govern English Masons, succeeded in restoring Charles II, but failed to restore James and his sons. But the degrees they invented and used for the most infamous of purposes were hardened into a, quote, rite of perfection, which the Jew Morin, with 12 other Jews, sold for money as their father sold Christ, right? So they were on a mission. The Jesuits told the Jews, go and sell this all around the world, basically. And what did the Jews do? They sold it for money, right? As they do when they control the central banking scheme. It goes on and it says, but Mitchell, Dalco, and Provost, who were not Jews, altered and spliced their rite of perfection into the ancient and accepted rite of 33 degrees. Then they sent this monstrous production of fraud, falsehood, and treachery, treason, and blasphemy back to Europe. You know why it's all over the world now? It's because these guys right here, these mind control slaves, sent this blasphemous, treasonous falsehood back to Europe. The Grand Orient, that would be the Russian Lodge, which has since expunged from its ritual God and the immortality of man. That would be the Communist Lodge, right? They have expunged that. Who knows what it's like today, right? It's ever changing. But clearly we see that the Grand Orient, right, that would be Aleister Crowley's Grand Orient Lodge type mind control, they do expunge God and immortality of the man, right? So it becomes more of this mind control pedophilia and all this degeneracy that we see today, that a lot of these Hollywood types are part of, the Grand Orient. So God and immortality of man is removed from the lodge in the Grand Orient. They adopted this monstrous rite and spread it over Europe. While in this country, its supreme grand commander is the infidel traitor, the guerrilla general Albert Pike, whose initiated Indians massacred Union troops at Pea Ridge. But those who imagine that the crushing of popular liberty in Europe and America is the chief end and objects of Masonry wholly mistake its nature and drift. Like that unclean religion whose temple was in Ephesus, whose goddess, it was said, all Asia and the world worshipeth. The lodge is a conspiracy against God, made by him who waged war in heaven, made by the devil. Overturning governments, crushing out liberty, these are but its byplay. In the words of its chief authority, Mackey, its intent is to establish on this earth the, quote, religion in which all mankind agree. That's the mind control right there. Endless genealogies leading to the mind control of polytheism. To put the pure worship of Almighty God through Christ on a moral level with the worship of horses in Japan, of monkeys in Hindustan, and of snakes, devils, and gorillas in Africa. I couldn't have said it better myself. That is exactly what it is. It is bringing Christ down to the level of worshiping pagan deities. And this is the blasphemy of what Masonry consists of. So it goes on and it says, let's read this section right here. This is truly a Jesuit degree. What body of men, unless they were Jesuits, would allow 7 of their numbered to supervise them secretly? How would such men know what to esteem right or wrong, till they felt the bludgeon or the poniard of the secret master, quote unquote, who but a Jesuit could have invented such a degree? So with that, we'll end this reading, and I wanted to bring this out because it's important for you to know that the higher degrees, beginning with the 4th degree, is all Jesuitical. It is Roman Catholic. It is invented by the Papists coming out of the French Revolution. They wanted to take over Protestant England, and for the most part, they have succeeded in the mind control of all of this, going back from lodgery to popery, from popery to lodgery. This is what you see in the news, right? If you point something out about Masonry, the news will promote popery. If you talk about popery, the news will promote the one world religion of all the religions being the same in lodgery. And it's forever going back and forth. So you need to understand the tactic. And with this reading, we'll end this video, and we'll see you in our next video.